No Rest for the Wicked is releasing soon, and I'm incredibly excited. Ori and the Blind Forest is one of my favorite platformer games, or maybe it's the game that just reignited my love for platformer. I'm also a fan of games that offer challenging yet rewarding combat. Think Dark Souls here. So this is pretty much a match made in heaven for me. So today I wanted to go over the deep dive that the developers put out recently and give some of my thoughts on their philosophies. Also, if you want to see me play No Rest for the Wicked, get subscribed, because I'm going to be playing it very soon. Oh, and leave a like while you're down there. Gotta appease the algorithm gods after all.
With No Rest for the Wicked, we decided to handcraft an entirely seamless world. Nothing in this game is procedurally generated. Instead of moving across a randomly generated flat plane, throughout this showcase you will notice that our world is dense, interactive, uses a ton of verticality, and that every inch was crafted by a designer.
These days, I find myself gravitating more towards handcrafted worlds. Because sure, when you first experience them, procedural generated worlds are great. They look beautiful, you can see all sorts of trees, explore huge areas, and then you realize something. You just passed that tree. And no, I don't mean because all video game trees look similar. I mean, you literally just passed that tree. And this isn't even the first time or the second time, this is the third. At the end of the day, procedural worlds have their limits. And so I much prefer a game that chooses to handcraft a smaller world and allows players to explore it. I also like that they mentioned verticality so far, because verticality is very much something that I value in games. A boring flat plane isn't always boring. Sometimes you can get lost in a very horizontal jungle or maze or labyrinth just as easily as you can a vertical space. But what vertical spaces do is twofold. First, more places to explore. The Lies of P demo did this beautifully. You'd go around the narrow streets of Krat, and then as you reached a different area, you'd go up and realize, oh, actually I was only exploring half of this area. The rooftop is the other half of a level. So it made what was otherwise quite small feel much larger. And I expect the same thing's going to happen in No Rest for the Wicked. Something else that verticality can do is give you a sense of scale. You get to look off of a mountaintop and go, I can explore over there. Or, when you're starting at the bottom of a valley, you look up and you go, maybe I can climb that mountain. The game that I played recently which did this best, well, actually played about a year ago now, was Legend of Zelda Tears of a Kingdom. Starting you off above the entire world and having you jump down, let you see all the cool places that you could explore. And I get similar vibes from No Rest for the Wicked, where constantly at the edge of my screen, just off the horizon, I'll see a cool thing and go, I want to see what's over there. I want to explore this. I want to experience the world.
Right from the start, we decided to create an animation-driven combat system, which to us meant that every attack you make should be carefully considered. We wanted to bring weighty, precision-driven combat to the top-down space. Combat that's inspired by several different genres from ARPGs to fighting games. In order to overcome an opponent, you need to watch out for telegraphed behaviors and then punish accordingly. Timing, spacing, and weapon weight are incredibly important in Wicked's combat model.
Trying to slow down the pace of combat is where I feel a lot of ARPGs go wrong, because they do it by making combat clunky, by saying, hey, you can't attack fast anymore because you'll run out of mana really quickly if you do. Then you have to go back to town to buy more mana potions so that you can keep attacking quickly. This feels bad, because it feels like the entire game system is just telling you no. This, combined with the fairly imprecise click-to-move that most ARPGs use, leads to an awful feeling combat experience. I mean, think about it. When you're playing a game like Diablo or Path of Exile, a lot of the time, you're either wiping out the monsters on screen, or they're wiping you out. There isn't as much technical gameplay. Now I know in Diablo 3, Greater Rift pushing, sometimes it gets pretty technical. But broad strokes, most of the gameplay in D4, casual gameplay in D3, a lot of gameplay in Path of Exile as well, not very technical. So what I like about No Rest for the Wicked is they've taken the Dark Souls approach here. Things are weighty because you are not meant to be spamming your buttons constantly. You have a certain amount of attacks, and even if there's nothing technically stopping you from attacking, there's an enemy who will very much punish you for doing so at a foolish moment. I really like this approach because it rewards players. It makes you feel clever when you get that parry off. It makes you feel smart when you dodge an enemy, slip behind them, and kill them. You no longer feel like you're just fighting against your mana bar. You're fighting against an actual thing on the screen. And if you're going for meaningful combat, I think this is the step that a lot of devs miss when they try to slow things down. They slow it down without making it meaningful. And this is a really, really big part of why I'm excited for No Rest for the Wicked. I love meaningful combat. In fact, one of the biggest things I dislike about ARPGs is how meaningless the combat often feels. So I'm looking forward to getting absolutely smashed by baddies, because yeah, I'm definitely not going to be beating these things on my first try. I'm not that good at these kinds of games.
Gear in No Rest for the Wicked comes in 4 different rarities. White items are common. Unlike in other ARPGs, they're not trash loot. We instead made those the most customizable. Blue items are rare. They offer only positive enchantments. Purple items are cursed. They offer very positive enchantments, but they also come with a cursed enchantment. Gold items are unique. They are specifically handcrafted by our designers and offer unique enchantments.
When I heard that white items weren't just floor trash, they were instead the base that you can build off of, the most customizable, I immediately thought of Path of Exile. Because yes, a lot of the white items in Path of Exile are floor trash. But high item level white bases were at one point the pinnacle of crafting. You started with a base and you built up from there. In a lot of ways, and a lot of the time, it kind of still is, but also kind of not. The crafting system has evolved a lot since I first played in the open beta. So what I'm looking forward to in No Rest for the Wicked is making custom items, because this is something that Dark Souls doesn't really have. In Dark Souls, you just get a weapon, you can do a little bit with it, change the elements, change some of the scaling, and then there you go. That is the weapon, that's it, but you can't really change the moveset. Now, Lies of P did change this up a little bit, allowing you to combine a weapon with a hilt to actually influence the moveset. And this kind of looks like the next step of that, taking some of the ARPG crafting systems and adding them on top of a Souls-like gameplay, which is really cool. They went on to elaborate a little bit about how this works. You can break weapons down for runes, and this allows you to apply that rune to another item, enhancing its moveset and modifying it just a bit. So you'll end up with several different special moves that you can unleash when the time is right. Each of them will have animations, some will be easier to pull off, others will be harder to pull off. Overall, something that's very exciting, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and start making some builds.
I saw a Sakura is riddled with plagued enemies known as the Torn. As you can see, this Torn has been left to mutate and fester and will prove particularly vicious. Our best course of action is to study his moves and attack whenever we see an opening. Bosses are also quite brutal in No Rest for the Wicked. They will punish every mistake you will make. But keep a cool head, make use of all of the skills you've learned, and you just might succeed.
One thing that I immediately noticed when watching this boss combat is it's very different from a Souls game. Because in a lot of Souls games, you're up close and against a gigantic foe. Now here, to be fair, the boss is gigantic in comparison to the player character, but you have the isometric camera view. You're pulled back by so much more, which means you get to see the boss and its movesets way more clearly. This also allows the boss to use these wide sweeping attacks that kind of remind me of games like Sekiro, which also had a little bit more of a pulled back camera, at least in comparison to some of the earlier Dark Souls. This is also because many of its areas were wide open. Something else that you see repeated here. You're not fighting in an enclosed area, you're out in the open, which means there's a lot of room for the boss to move around, and oh boy, does it move around. I think this should make for some very challenging and quite interesting fights, while still maintaining a high level of visual clarity so you can actually see exactly what you were supposed to dodge, fail to dodge it anyway, and then feel really bad afterwards. But hey, you'll get good eventually.
One last thing we'd like to show you today is a system we call Alive. Although No Rest for the Wicked features a traditional campaign, it was important to us that the Solar Sakura is very much a living, breathing world. In order to show you what that means, we're going to go to an area called Mariner's Keep. This is an area I've previously ventured through and explored. However, since my last journey through here, NIF have overrun the local area, presenting entirely new threats for me to tackle and resources for me to scavenge. The world of No Rest for the Wicked is constantly changing around you. And each time you visit a region, you'll be faced with a drastically different experience. For those of you who asked about endgame, yes, we've got you covered. While we don't want to give away too much at this point, once you reach the endgame, you can enter the Serum Crucible. This is where you'll have to test your mettle against some of the toughest enemies within No Rest for the Wicked.
More and more, I find myself valuing games which give an atmospheric and immersive experience. And what's more immersive than going through an area, clearing out all the baddies, and instead of coming back to a ghost town or coming back to the exact same enemies respawned, but this time angrier and higher level with bigger numbers, coming back to a completely different group of enemies, throwing a party, and trying to murder your face off? Yep, this is a way to keep the game interesting and engaging, even when you're revisiting old areas. Which I think is very, very interesting. I haven't seen too many games do this successfully. A lot of them try to, and it ends up just feeling routine or rote because you can end up finding out how the scripted events work that spawn these enemies. But I'm definitely excited to see how it plays out. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on very quickly is endgame. And my big concern here is that the existence of an endgame will ruin the game for some people. Because a lot of modern ARPGs, you're supposed to level as fast as possible, rush to the end because endgame is all that matters. And from everything I've seen so far, that is not No Rest for the Wicked. That's not what they're going for here. So, if you're rushing to endgame to give yourself the proper experience, you're actually losing the vast majority of what the game has to offer. So instead, I would say enjoy the journey. With that said, I am very, very excited for No Rest for the Wicked. It feels like 2023 was one of the best years in video games we've had in a while, and now I'm looking at 2024 going, wait a minute, so there's No Rest for the Wicked, there's Hades 2, there's an Elden Ring expansion. Like, what's next? How are they topping 2023? Yet somehow the games industry does seem to be topping 2023. The problem being, how do I find time to play all these games? Used to be that I'd think, oh, I have a whole month to play this game. Now I'm like, why are games I want to play releasing literally on the same day? So I'm definitely going to be diving into the early access for No Rest for the Wicked. I plan to play it quite a bit, and I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot. What do you think? Does this game look up your alley? And if so, what are you hoping to see out of the game? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is down below. And also, a big thanks to everyone who watched to the end. I know this isn't necessarily my normal fare, but I wanted to make the video to talk about some of my thoughts because I do think a lot of aspects, or at least design philosophies, from No Rest for the Wicked are going to be revolutionary. They're taking a lot of ideas that people have done before and presenting them in a really smart package. But that's it for me today. I'll see you in the next one.